こんにちは。私の部屋 AJ's トークルームへようこそ。このシリーズではアメリカと日本をつなぐさまざまなトピックについてお話ししていきます。 AJ はアメリカの A、ジャパンの J、そして私のニックネームでもあります。
Hello, and welcome to AJ's Talk Room. In this series, we'll explore various topics that connect America and Japan. AJ stands for America, Japan, and it's also my nickname.
オープニングの挨拶でホストの AJ から日本語と英語で簡単に説明があったように、 AJ's トークルームではアメリカと日本の文化、生活、歴史、そして最近のトレンドについて AJ がゲストと共に語り合います。またこの会話を通じて英語と日本語の語学力を深める機会を提供できるよう工夫されています。今回はアメリカ人プロゴルファーのデイビッドさんをゲストに迎え、ゴルフの魅力や日米のゴルフ文化の違い、ゴルフを通じて学んだこと、そしてアメリカでゴルフをする際に役立つ情報をお届けします。また会話を通じてゴルフ関連の英語表現やボキャブラリーも自然に学べる構成です。さらに AJ が旅先で撮影したゴルフコースの写真やさまざまな画像も交えながら進めていきます。それではお二人の会話と映像をどうぞお楽しみください。
David, it's great to have you here. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. Golf has always fascinated me because it's more than just a sport. It's a reflection of culture, history, and lifestyle. It's one of those rare activities that connects people across generations and borders. I'd love to hear your perspective on how the game has shaped your life. So, how did you first get into golf?
It's a pleasure to be here, AJ. My journey with golf started when I was just 8 years old. My dad was an avid golfer and a member of a private club in Boulder, Colorado. I still remember tagging along with him on weekends, learning the basics of the game while walking the pristine fairways. Those summer days on the course quickly became a highlight of my childhood. In the winters, I'd switch gears and focus on basketball, which helped me develop a competitive mindset and discipline that carried over into golf. Both sports shaped who I am, but golf eventually won my heart. I've been hooked ever since.
That's fantastic. Starting young must have been a great way to grow into the game, and it's incredible that you took that foundation and built a professional career out of it. But I'm curious, what do you find most captivating about golf?
That's an interesting question. For me, the allure of golf lies in its unique blend of challenge, beauty, and camaraderie. It's a game that constantly tests you, mentally, physically, and emotionally. No matter how long you've been playing, there's always a new skill to refine or something new to learn. That sense of endless growth and the pursuit of improvement is what keeps me coming back. Golf also takes you to some of the most beautiful places in the world. There's something magical about being out on the course early in the morning, watching the sun rise over the fairways. The connection to nature is part of what makes the game so special. And then there's the social aspect. Golf has this amazing ability to bring people together. Whether it's through friendly competition, shared experiences, or just a great conversation during a round, the friendships you form on the course are truly unique. Golf is a sport deeply rooted in fair play and integrity. The act of calling a penalty on yourself and respecting the rules instills lessons that extend far beyond the game. These values, combined with the camaraderie and lasting memories it creates, are what make golf truly special.
I'm really glad to hear your perspective. It's clear that golf has profoundly influenced more than just your time on the course. It's shaped how you view life, people, and the world. The values it cultivates, respect, fair play, and the meaningful connections it fosters, leave such a lasting mark. It's inspiring to see how those lessons resonate far beyond the game itself. Well, I'd love to hear more of your story and thoughts, but I want to ask, what do you think was the key that made you such a good golfer?
That's an interesting question, AJ. If I had to pick one thing, I'd say it's the ability to create a clear and useful image of the shot I want to hit. I learned early on that my best shots happened when I could first see them clearly in my mind. When I struggled, it was usually because my mind was cluttered with doubt or hesitation. But here's the thing. A good image doesn't just give you confidence, it gives you a plan. When I can see the shot, my body naturally understands how to move, how to turn, how to position my arms, and how to move the club through impact. The clearer my image, the more instinctively my body follows that motion.
So, the image isn't just about mental clarity, it actually helps you intuitively move your body correctly and execute better shots?
Exactly. A strong image leads to a clear idea of movement. If you don't have a clear picture in your head, your body doesn't know what to do, and that's when you start second-guessing your swing. That's why my practice wasn't just about repetition. It was about consistently creating those images, regardless of the lie. I focused on visualizing my body movements to execute good shots from all kinds of lies, including difficult ones where a positive image is harder to form. I believe my body needs to know exactly what to do before I even take the club back. After all, golf is a game where you play the ball as it lies.
That's a fascinating way to think about it. It's almost like the image acts as a blueprint, guiding your body through the swing. You learned that when you were young. My journey was quite different. Let me explain. I didn't pick up golf until I moved to New York in the 80s when I was 32 years old. But it quickly became a huge part of my life. Golf is such a significant part of life in New York. And I ended up spending most of my weekends at my club. Back then, when circumstances permitted, I often played 2 rounds a day. It was my way of fully immersing myself in the sport, enjoying a refreshing break from my professional life, and building meaningful connections with others.
New York in the 80s must have been an interesting place to start golfing. What was the experience like back then?
It was fascinating. That was the era of persimmon drivers, which had a certain elegance to them. At the time, iron sets were sold as a set of 8 clubs, and they were surprisingly affordable compared to today's standards. I still remember paying just $199 for my first set, which included from a pitching wedge to a 3-iron. I carried 3 persimmon woods, 9-iron through 3-iron, and both pitching and sand wedges. Back then, the standard loft for a pitching wedge was 48 degrees, and a 56-degree sand wedge was the norm. The variety of clubs was much simpler compared to today. There were no specialty wedges, hybrids, or lofted woods like 7 woods or 9 woods. All the shafts, even for drivers, were made of steel.
That's so fascinating. It's incredible to see how much golf equipment has evolved over the years. These days, golfers have such a vast array of options. Multiple wedges with different lofts, hybrids replacing long irons, and a huge selection of graphite shafts designed to suit varying swing speeds, styles, and preferences. And then there's the advanced data, spin rates, launch angles, and trajectory analysis with tools like TrackMan. It's like golfers now need not only to sharpen their skills on the course but also to dive into the complexities of equipment to truly optimize their game.
You're right, David. Today's golfers need to know more than just skills. They also need to understand how to choose and use their equipment effectively. When I started playing, things were very different, both in terms of technology and accessibility. Golf in New York was incredibly accessible and casual, especially on public courses. There were no reservations at all, let alone smartphones to book tee times. Green fees were affordable, and you could simply show up, pay, and start playing. I'd often head to the nearby public course early in the morning around 6 a.m. to join the line as a single golfer, waiting for an early tee time. I usually ended up playing with strangers, but that laid-back atmosphere, filled with mostly average golfers, made it easy to enjoy and learn the game. Back then, as someone new to the sport, I turned to books to help me improve. The first book I bought was Jack Nicklaus's Golf My Way. It was a paperback, affordable, and packed with practical advice. A perfect choice for a beginner like me.
Nicklaus's book really was the go-to for your generation of golfers. For me, it was Tiger Woods' How I Play Golf. That book came out when I was a teenager.
That makes sense. Tiger Woods brought an entirely new dynamic to the sport, dominating the PGA in the 2000s. In my case, after building some confidence with Nicklaus's book, I decided to challenge myself further with Ben Hogan's 5 Lessons, The Modern Fundamentals of Golf. Hogan's book was different. It made me think deeply and interpret his techniques on a whole new level. His swing plane concept was revolutionary for me, making me completely rethink the way I swing my club. And then there were the technical terms, like pronate and supinate. They were a whole new language to me.
Hogan's book is legendary. It's almost like studying a science manual for golf fundamentals. I even know a few younger friends who are big fans of Hogan as well.
I'm not sure how much I truly understood back then. There weren't resources like YouTube or golf websites to break things down visually. Hogan's concepts were so detailed and precise that they felt overwhelming at times, but I kept coming back to the book, trying to absorb as much as I could.
That makes sense. Hogan's writing can feel like solving a puzzle. It's the kind of book where you discover something new each time you revisit it. That's what makes it a timeless classic.
Exactly. I just applied what I could at the time, even if I didn't fully grasp everything. Looking back, that process of learning and experimenting really helped me grow as a golfer. I also watched tournaments on TV to pick up things books couldn't teach, like swing tempo, short game techniques, and patting styles.
Resources back then were so different from what we have today. How quickly were you able to break 100? Isn't that a big milestone that so many golfers strive for and love to talk about?
Absolutely. I still remember the day I broke 100 for the first time. It was at a local municipal course. I managed to achieve it in just 3 months, but it took a lot of practice and countless balls at the range. That moment made me feel like all the hard work had finally paid off. From there, I set new goals, breaking 90, then breaking 80.
I often hear golfers set goals like breaking 90 or 80. But I was different. I never really thought about it that way. I think I broke 80 when I was around 12 years old. But at the time, it wasn't about the numbers. For me, it was more about being out on the course, enjoying the game, and focusing on simply getting better each time I played.
It doesn't surprise me, David. I know you're a natural and in a league of your own. For me, though, breaking 80 was a huge milestone at the time. It took just under 3 years, and while I never expected it to be easy or effortless, I believed consistent practice would lead to steady improvement, but that wasn't the case. Despite all the time and effort I put in, my progress stalled, and for the next 2 years or so, I saw little to no improvement. After about 5 years of playing at local public courses, I joined a private golf club in 1990. That was a game changer for me. It gave me access to better facilities, a consistent group of playing partners, and opportunities to compete in club tournaments. The structured environment helped me refine my game and taught me the importance of strategy and discipline on the course. It also deepened my love for the sport. I realized golf wasn't just a hobby anymore. It had become an essential part of my life. Every weekend, I teed off in the morning with members, many of whom were initially better golfers than me. We typically played in a 4-ball game, pairing high and low handicappers together. It was a long-standing tradition at the club, and one that helped me develop both my skills and a sense of camaraderie.
4ボールゲームは2人1組のチーム戦でそれぞれが自分のボールをプレーする形式のゲームです。この画像のようにルールブックの規則23にそのルールが明記されています。ストロークプレー、マッチプレーのどちらでも可能ですが、プライベートクラブではハンデ戦のマッチプレーで遊ぶことが一般的で、ナッソー形式の握りを取り入れることがよくあります。異なるハンデキャップを持つ2人がペアを組み、各ホールで良い方のネットスコアがチームスコアになります。画像はスクラッチのストローク戦のスコア記入例ですが、ハンデ戦の場合はグロススコアとネットスコアの両方を記入します。4ボールゲームの魅力は、異なるレベルのプレイヤーが一緒に楽しみながら戦略を練り、チームとしてプレーできる点にあります。そのため、アメリカのプライベートクラブで非常に人気があり、仲間との絆を深めるゲームとして親しまれています。また、ライダーカップの公式フォーマットとしても採用されており、世界トップクラスの競技でも使用されるフォーマットです。
When I was in Boulder, Colorado, I played 4-ball golf every once in a while. It's such a fun and strategic format. So, AJ, aside from playing 4-ball golf, what else did you do at your club? Anything particularly memorable?
One of my most memorable experiences was competing in the club championship final for the first time in 1996. It was an intense match. and while I ultimately lost on the 37th hole, the thrill of competing at that level and the lessons I learned from the experience made it unforgettable.
The match must have turned around the other way. You probably remember the moment that could have changed the result. I've never won a PGA tournament, but I've had several times where I felt I could have. One of those moments was in 2006 in Las Vegas. I was at the top of the leaderboard on the final day. But I didn't close it out, and that missed opportunity still stays with me. It's those moments that teach you the most, though, don't they? They push you to reflect, adapt, and come back stronger. Well, AJ, what else do you remember well from your time at the club? Anything interesting, like a hole-in-one?
That's funny, you mentioned a hole-in-one. I have a remarkable story to share. It happened during a one-day member guest tournament. It was a shotgun start with a stable Ford format, and my final hole was the third, a 150-yard par 3. It was a hole where we couldn't see the green surface from the tee, but I felt great about my swing with a 7-iron. As I hit a solid shot, I had a feeling that my ball must be close to the pin, but as I approached the green, I didn't see my ball near the hole. Instead of searching around, I walked straight to the hole, and there it was, sitting at the bottom of the cup. I'd made a hole-in-one, gained 8 points and won the tournament. It was such an incredible and unforgettable way to finish the day. Here's the plaque commemorating that unforgettable hole-in-one, David. To make it even more dramatic, it was also a closest to the pinhole. A friend of mine had hit his shot to within a couple of inches, but my hole-in-one took the prize. I felt a little guilty about stealing his moment, but we laughed about it afterward. It's one of those stories that never gets old and still makes me smile whenever I think about it.
That's such a great story, AJ. Moments like that are what make golf so special. They're not just about the game, but about the memories and connections that stay with you forever. By the way, what was it like being a member of a private club in New York? I imagine it might be quite different from the private clubs I'm familiar with.
I joined a private club in New York in 1990, just a 30-minute drive from my home. Unlike many country clubs, this club was focused almost entirely on the golf experience. The membership was limited to just 200 members and their families, and more than 50 of the members were single-digit handicappers. It created an environment that was both welcoming and highly competitive. Well, David, take a look at this. The Centennial Anniversary book of my club, published in 1998, which showcases the history and legacy of the club, along with photos of all 18 holes. By local standards, this club wasn't particularly exclusive or luxurious, and it didn't have strict membership qualifications. The initiation fee was $6,000, and the annual membership dues were just under $6,000, with an additional $1,000 minimum spending requirement for food and drinks. Some exclusive clubs in the New York metropolitan area were known for their strict membership rules and steep price tags, making them accessible to only a select few. And as an ordinary person from Japan, it wasn't always easy to become a member of those clubs. But the club I joined was different. It welcomed members who were passionate about golf and didn't focus as much on exclusivity or prestige. The club had a strong sense of community, and one of the traditions I enjoyed most was the annual match between the international team and the Italian team, played in the Ryder Cup format. Many of the members were of Italian origin, so this event was always a highlight of the year. It was an honor to be selected to represent the international team, and the camaraderie and competitive spirit of those matches made them truly special. After joining the club, I brought my handicap down to single digits within a couple of years. By around 5 years in, I was consistently playing between a 2 and a 5, though it would occasionally fluctuate. One of the proudest milestones of my time at the club was serving as the team captain of the international team. It was an honor that truly reflected the growth I had achieved in my journey as a golfer. What I appreciated most was the balance. The club was serious about the game but also fostered a relaxed atmosphere where you could enjoy camaraderie with fellow members. That mix is rare, but it's what made the club so special to me.
Very interesting. Being a competitive golfer really pushes you to grow, both on and off the course. It's amazing how much it shapes your perspective and connects you with others who share the same passion. The camaraderie and the experiences you've shared must have been truly rewarding.
Absolutely. Being a competitive golfer brought some unexpected benefits too. One of the biggest perks was the friendships I built along the way. Through those friendships, I was fortunate enough to play some of the most exclusive and prestigious courses in the U.S., places like Pine Valley, Marion, Oakmont, Winged Foot, Baltusrol, the Country Club, Sleepy Hollow, and Westchester Country Club, to name just a few. Each of these courses had its own character and history, and playing them felt like stepping into golf's living history. It was humbling to walk the same fairways where legends had competed, and those experiences deepened my love for the game.
That's incredible. Those are some of the most iconic courses in the world. Playing on those must have been unforgettable. I can imagine how much history and tradition you could feel on those fairways. It's like being part of something much bigger than just the game itself.
Exactly, David. Those rounds were about more than just golf. They were moments of connection and learning, and they gave me a chance to challenge myself on courses that demand precision and creativity. And sometimes those connections led to surprising encounters. I once played in a member guest tournament at Stanwich, one of the most exclusive clubs near my home, and a course I absolutely loved. During the event, I recognized familiar faces from TV and sports broadcasts. I even spotted Jim Nantz alongside Mike Ditka, the Chicago Bears' legendary coach, no surprise given their passion for the game. It reminded me how golf can bring together people from all walks of life, including those who might be difficult to meet otherwise. It's a sport that connects us, whether we're playing an exclusive course or hitting balls at the local range. Actually, that reminds me of a late-night encounter I had at a driving range with Bill Murray.
Tell me more about that, AJ.
The story is really just about the fact that I practiced a lot. I used to spend countless hours at the range trying to refine my game. This particular night, it was almost 10 p.m., close to closing time, and I thought I was the only one there. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind me say, "Nice shot." I turned around, replied, "Thank you," and then felt a moment of hesitation. At first, I didn't even register who he was. It took me a few seconds. Then it hit me. That person was Bill Murray. He was casually hitting balls at the range just like anyone else. It's one of those random, unforgettable moments that reminds you how golf can be this great equalizer. Whether you're a pro, an actor, or just an average golfer, everyone comes to the range to work on their game.
That's such a cool story, AJ. Bill Murray is a legend, and Caddyshack is practically a rite of passage for anyone who loves golf. I actually play the AT&T Pebble-Beach Pro-Am every year, and Bill is a regular there. Watching him interact with fans and other players is just as entertaining as his movies. Pro-Ams like Pebble Beach are a fantastic mix of golf and celebrity culture. I've had the chance to meet actors, musicians, athletes, and business leaders. What's amazing is how golf seems to level the playing field. No matter how successful someone is off the course, they can still miss an easy putt or sink a 30-footer, and those moments stick with you. It's such a unique way to connect with people.
Absolutely, David. Whether it's at a pro-am, a private club, or even a late-night driving range, golf has this incredible way of bringing people together. It's one of the reasons I love the game so much. That sense of connection and community is something I've experienced not just in the U.S., but also in Japan. Golf culture in Japan has its own unique character, just as rich and rewarding but in very different ways. When I first played golf in Japan in the early 90s while on a business trip, I was struck by how different the experience was, from the way you checked in to how caddies interacted with golfers. While I was born in Japan and grew up there, I didn't know much about Japanese golf culture at all. It was fascinating to see how the sport had adapted to fit the country's traditions and values. I remember how surprised Japanese visitors were in the late 80s and early 90s when they saw how affordable public golf courses were in the U.S. In Japan, golf boomed from the late 70s to the early 90s, attracting people from all walks of life. But with limited courses, tee times were scarce, memberships were expensive, and playing golf often felt like a luxury.
That's fascinating, AJ. In preparation for our conversation today, I did some research on the history of golf in the U.S. and I found it really interesting. Golf evolved so differently in Japan and the US. The first course in the US was Oakhurst Links in West Virginia, built in 1884. But organized golf truly took shape with St. Andrews Golf Club in New York in 1888, the oldest continuously operating club in the country. Golf grew steadily in the early 1900s, but the real boom came after World War II. The 1950s saw a rise in private clubs, followed by a surge of public courses in the 1960s and 70s. By 1970, the U.S. had over 7,500 courses, making the sport far more accessible.
Really? So nearly half of all golf courses in the U.S. were built before 1970. You know, I was surprised to learn that the club I joined, just a 30-minute drive north of St. Andrews, was founded in 1898, over a decade after the oldest golf club in the U.S. It's interesting to see how golf expanded in the region during that time. I never realized that connection before. Take a look at these old pictures from the club's early days.
That's fascinating. I hadn't thought about that either when you first talked about your club in New York and showed me the Centennial book. It's amazing how closely it's tied to the origins of golf in America.
Japan's first golf course, Kobe Golf Club, was built in 1903, only about 20 years after the earliest courses in the U.S. However, the sport expanded quite differently in the two countries. While the U.S. saw steady growth early on, surpassing 5,000 courses by the 1950s, Japan's boom came much later. From the late 1960s to the early 1990s, the number of courses in Japan soared, from fewer than 200 in 1960 to over 2,300 by the early 90s. Golf transformed from an elite pastime into a mainstream aspiration. But when the economic bubble burst in the early 90s, the rapid expansion came to a halt. Course development slowed and closures increased, marking the start of a long-term decline.
In my research, I found that the U.S. currently has approximately 13,963 golf facilities, with a total of 15,963 18-hole equivalent golf courses. In contrast, as of 2023, Japan has around 2,190 golf facilities. But if we count by 18-hole equivalent courses, the number is estimated to be around 3,000.
That's right. Japan had over 2,400 golf facilities at its peak in 2009, but in recent years, the number has declined significantly. As of 2023, Japan still holds the second highest number of golf courses in the world, but the landscape has changed quite a bit from its peak years.
What led to this decline in Japan?
There are a few factors at play. One major reason is the steady decline in household income, especially when measured in dollar terms. The size of Japan's middle class has also shrunk over the years, making golf less accessible to the average person. But before we get into the recent trends, let's talk about the boom era of golf in Japan. During its peak, the demand for golf was so high that courses were constantly fully booked, and memberships became coveted status symbols. In fact, golf club memberships weren't just expensive, they were speculative assets, with some being traded for tens of millions of yen. It was a time when joining a club was as much about investment as it was about playing the game.
That's incredible. Japan's rise in the golf world during that period must have been a huge boost for the sport. I imagine those new courses also had some unique designs to fit the country's terrain and culture.
Absolutely. Japanese course architects had to work creatively with the limited land available, especially in mountainous regions. Many courses were compact but highly challenging, rewarding precision over power. What made them truly distinctive was their design aesthetic. Many incorporated elements of Japanese garden style, with beautifully landscaped areas featuring carefully placed trees, water features, and even koi ponds. Playing these courses felt like walking through a serene Japanese garden, offering an experience that was as much about enjoying the surroundings as it was about the game itself. Interestingly, during Japan's golf boom, many notable American and European architects were invited to design courses here. Pete Dye, for example, left his mark with his bold and strategic designs, and Robert Trent Jones Jr. was another big name who contributed to Japan's golf landscape. Their designs often brought a mix of international flair and challenging layouts, which helped elevate Japanese golf to a more global standard.
That's fascinating. I can see how the combination of local aesthetics and international expertise would create something really unique. Pete Dye, with his emphasis on strategy, and Robert Trent Jones Jr., with his focus on player experience, must have added an entirely new dimension to the courses in Japan.
Exactly. Their influence brought new ideas to Japan, blending Western design philosophies with Japan's traditional emphasis on harmony and precision. But there was also a uniquely Japanese design trend during the 80s and early 90s that you probably wouldn't find anywhere else: two green courses.
Two green courses? I've never heard of that. What was the idea behind that design?
It's an interesting concept and, as far as I know, unique to Japan. The idea was to have two separate greens for each hole, one planted with bent grass and the other with korai grass. Bent grass thrives in cooler seasons, while korai is more heat-resistant and can handle Japan's humid summers. This system gave courses the flexibility to maintain playable conditions throughout the year. Seiji Inoue, one of Japan's most reputable golf course architects, introduced the concept of two green courses in the 1980s. At the time, it was a practical solution that allowed courses to use different types of grass for varying seasons and conditions, especially before stronger and more adaptable bent grass varieties became widely available. Consequently, the two-green layout is a hallmark of courses built during that era. Older courses from before the 1980s typically have a single green, making the two-green design a unique and defining feature of that particular period in Japanese golf history.
It sounds like a practical solution for Japan's climate. In the U.S., we see both bent grass green courses and Bermuda green courses in states like Virginia. While Bermuda greens are still the most common in Florida, some high-end courses have successfully introduced bent grass greens with advanced turf management.
You know, the two-green system added not just variety but also adaptability to the courses. It's a great example of the meticulous attention to detail in Japanese golf. While most two-green courses were built primarily during the 1980s, a relatively short period, many of these courses still maintain their two-green layouts today. Though some have since converted to a single green, these two-green courses remain a fascinating reminder of how golf in Japan evolved to address its unique environmental challenges. I played a two-green course for the first time in 2007 when I returned to Japan. These courses are often quite challenging because the greens are small and elevated. Getting on the green in regulation isn't easy, and approach shots require precision since there's usually not much green to work with.
That sounds like a great test of skill. Two green layouts must demand a lot from players in terms of accuracy and strategy.
Exactly. What surprised me even more was discovering a two-green hole in the U.S. in 2011, on the 8th hole at Pine Valley. Later, I learned that Charles Hugh Allison, who contributed to the design of Pine Valley, also worked in Japan during the early 1930s. He designed renowned courses like Hirono and Kawana, both ranked among the top 100 courses in the world. Interestingly, Seiji Inoue, who later popularized the two-green concept in Japan, traveled with Charles Allison during his stay in the country. He worked closely with Allison, learning the basics and his philosophy of golf course design. While it's hard to say for certain if there's a direct connection, it's fascinating to consider how design ideas may have traveled and influenced the evolution of golf courses across different cultures.
That's hard to believe. Japan saw a boom in golf course construction in the 80s and 90s. But over the last 20 years or so, the number of courses has declined, and green fees have become much more reasonable. Is that true?
That's right. Green fees in Japan are now much more affordable than they used to be. Relatively close to Tokyo, there are plenty of courses where you can play for under $100, even on weekends. If you're willing to venture a bit farther, around a 2-hour drive or more, you can find weekday rates as low as $40, often including a cart, a full lunch, and even a hot bath, a uniquely Japanese touch. This level of affordability and inclusivity makes golf accessible to a wide range of players, offering excellent value no matter where you play. What stands out, though, is that green fees in Japan usually cover almost everything you'll need on the course, making it a very inclusive and hassle-free experience. That said, there are exceptions. Some high-end courses and bucket list destinations in Japan can still be pricey, but even those often seem reasonable compared to their US counterparts, especially given the current exchange rate of roughly 150 yen per $1. Take the Kawana Hotel's Fuji course, for example. Designed by Charles Allison, it's one of Japan's most iconic and exclusive public access courses. Playing there requires an overnight stay at the hotel, with packages ranging from 59,935 yen to 74,930 yen, approximately $400 to $500, which includes accommodation based on double occupancy and caddy fees for a foursome. While that may sound expensive, it's still quite a bargain compared to many of the world's top-ranked courses. With its breathtaking ocean views and rich history, Kawana remains a dream destination for golfers, offering a truly unique experience that highlights the diversity of Japan's golfing landscape.
Well, it's quite different in the US, AJ. Green fees have risen significantly over the years, even for municipal courses like the Bethpage State Park courses in New York. There's still great value compared to high-end resort courses, but truly affordable rounds are getting harder to find.
I played the Bethpage courses often in the 80s and 90s, and as a New York State resident, I remember paying only $12. Back then, major tournaments like the US Open weren't hosted at Bethpage. It was purely a municipal facility.
The Black Course has hosted major tournaments several times now, and is even set to host the Ryder Cup in 2025. So, the Black Course is a bit of an exception, but the green fees for the other courses at Bethpage have definitely increased. Let me check the latest rates.
ベスページ州立公園は、ニューヨーク州ロングアイランドに位置する巨大なゴルフ施設で、渋滞がなければマンハッタンから約45分で到着できる便利な場所にあります。施設内には18ホールの本格的なコースが5つあり、その中でもブラックコースが特に有名です。全米オープンや PGA チャンピオンシップといったメジャートーナメントが開催される特別な難関コースとして知られています。また、2025年にはライダーカップの開催も予定されています。一方、レッド、ブルー、グリーン、イエローの4つのコースは、それぞれ異なる難易度を持ち、価格も比較的手頃で多くのゴルファーに利用されています。しかし、これからデイビッドさんが説明するように、近年では料金が上昇しているようです。
Here we go. The Black Course, which is the most famous and challenging of the 518-hole courses, is now the most expensive. For New York State residents, it's $65 on weekdays and $75 on weekends. For non-residents, those rates jump to $130 on weekdays and $150 on weekends. The Red Course, which is the second most prestigious, is slightly pricier than the other three courses. Residents pay $43 on weekdays and $48 on weekends, while non-residents pay $96 on weekdays and $101 on weekends. The blue, yellow, and green courses are more affordable, with rates of $38 for residents and $91 for non-residents on weekdays, and $43 and $96 on weekends. While these rates are still reasonable for residents, the higher fees for non-residents make them a more expensive option for visitors. That said, even $150 for a weekend round on the Black Course is quite reasonable compared to iconic courses like Pebble Beach or Whistling Straits, where green fees can exceed $500.
When I played the Bethpage courses back in the 90s, I walked the courses carrying my golf clubs on my shoulder, while many golfers used pull carts. Nowadays, on most municipal courses in the US, golfers typically walk with push carts instead of pull carts. Riding carts are less common since cart fees are typically not included in the green fees and can be quite expensive. At Bethpage, for example, a riding cart costs $40, compared to $37 when I visited in 2017. When we traveled and played golf in the 2010s, we used very light small caddy bags. On less challenging courses, we would sometimes carry our clubs on our shoulders for convenience. Personally, I prefer carrying my clubs. It adds a bit of extra exercise and feels more connected to the game. You know, in Japan, the approach to green fees and services is quite different. The green fees at many Japanese courses include a variety of services, such as carts, locker rooms, and even meals, which isn't common in the US. Also, did you know that resort destinations like Hawaii often have tiered pricing, with separate rates for residents, US citizens, and international visitors? David, do you know of any other places that do the same?
No, not that I know of. Hawaii's tiered pricing might be unique, but it sounds like it could be related to over-tourism. With so many international visitors heading to popular destinations like Hawaii, this pricing system might be a way to prioritize access for locals while managing demand. It's interesting, though. It's not something I've come across elsewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. It might be their way of balancing tourism and local access. In contrast, Japan's courses treat all visitors the same, whether they're local or international. It's a simpler system, but with the added cost of the golf tax on top of the consumption tax, playing golf in Japan still feels noticeably different from the U.S. experience.
If someone from Japan is planning to play golf in the U.S., I would recommend doing some research and planning ahead. Municipal courses like Bethpage can offer great value, especially for those willing to walk the course. For resort courses, it's worth checking for discounted tee times, as many U.S. courses use dynamic pricing, where fees drop during off-peak times. Also, be mindful that reservations are often required, but they're typically easy to make online, much easier and faster than calling. A golf trip to the U.S. doesn't have to be expensive. With thoughtful planning, choosing the right courses, using push carts or walking to save on costs, and staying flexible with tee times, it can be an amazing and affordable experience.
お二人の会話にもあったように、アメリカのグリーンフィーは、この10年から20年で大幅に値上がりしています。ベスページのようなパブリックコースでも、住民なら50ドル程度、外国人ビジターの場合は100ドル以上かかることも珍しくありません。また、アメリカと日本ではグリーンフィーの仕組みが大きく異なるため、単純に料金を比較するのは難しい面があります。こうした状況を踏まえ、日本からアメリカへゴルフ旅行を計画する場合、費用を抑えながら楽しむためには事前の準備が重要です。リゾートコースの選び方やディスカウントの活用次第では、リーズナブルで充実したゴルフ旅行も可能になります。
David, it was before the COVID-19 era, back in the 2010s, but I used to visit the U.S. every summer from Japan. Exploring national parks and playing golf at courses near the parks became one of my favorite pastimes during those days.
That sounds amazing, AJ. I've traveled all around the U.S. during my tournament days, playing different types of courses almost every week, so I'm pretty familiar with the variety of courses across the country. Combining national parks with golf must have been an incredible way to experience the U.S. Each park has such unique landscapes, and I can only imagine how stunning the nearby courses must have been. I'm familiar with some of the famous national parks, but which parks and courses stood out to you the most during those trips?
I have a deep appreciation for the southwestern and northwestern regions of North America, including the magnificent Canadian Rockies. For those who haven't explored iconic sites like the Grand Canyon and the breathtaking national parks along the Colorado River, flying into Las Vegas from Japan makes for a fantastic starting point. If you're looking to play plenty of golf, consider St. George, Utah, near Zion National Park, south of the Grand Canyon, Sedona, and further down in Scottsdale, Arizona, you'll find stunning, colorful courses set against breathtaking scenery. Desert courses are especially fun to play, offering stunning views unlike anything in Japan. The sight of fairways winding through dramatic rock formations and dotted with towering cacti creates an unforgettable golfing experience. The contrast between the lush green turf and the rugged desert landscape makes for a truly unique and visually striking round. In contrast, destinations like Glacier National Park, Yosemite, and Grand Teton showcase stunningly diverse landscapes and truly unique experiences. While I didn't play golf extensively in these areas, I always traveled with a compact golf set, 10 or 11 clubs. Playing golf in locations like Yosemite and Glacier National Park, surrounded by awe-inspiring scenery, was a truly special experience. Even though the course conditions were less than ideal, walking those 9-hole courses with my caddy bag slung over my shoulder was a joy in itself. The breathtaking landscapes more than made up for the subpar conditions, creating memories I'll treasure forever. With only a handful of golf courses located within national parks, the experience felt all the more rare and extraordinary.
Wow, I didn't know there were golf courses in the national parks. That must make for an incredible experience, combining golf with those stunning landscapes. I love playing courses in Arizona, though I've never played them in the peak of summer. The contrast between the desert's rugged terrain and the pristine fairways makes for a truly unique golfing experience. The way the greens stand out against the arid landscape is stunning, and the conditions are usually fantastic. Desert golf has its own distinct charm, and the dramatic scenery always makes for a memorable round.
That's so true, David. The contrast between the desert's rugged terrain and the pristine fairways is striking. It's another way to enjoy golf. A great pace changer, after spending days immersed in the striking brown and red hues of canyons and cliffs, stepping onto a lush green golf course feels like entering an entirely different world, a refreshing and invigorating escape. The Canadian Rockies is another destination I highly recommend for anyone looking to combine sightseeing and golfing. I made the journey back in 2015, and it was unforgettable. The blend of majestic mountains, pristine lakes, and world-class golf courses is truly something special.
I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, in the middle of the Rocky Mountains, but I have never been to Canadian Rocky. How is it different from Colorado?
The Canadian Rockies don't reach the same altitudes as Colorado, but the scenery is absolutely breathtaking in its own way. One of the highlights is the Icefields Parkway, a spectacular drive from Banff to Jasper. The views along the way are stunning: majestic mountains, glaciers, and those iconic turquoise lakes that seem almost unreal. Beyond the stunning natural beauty, this region is home to several world-class golf courses, including the iconic layouts in Banff and Jasper, both designed by Stanley Thompson, a legendary architect renowned for his classic yet enduring course designs. Playing on those courses feels like stepping back in time, all while being surrounded by some of the most awe-inspiring landscapes you'll ever encounter.
That sounds incredible, AJ. The Icefields Parkway must be a dream to drive through, and combining that with classic Stanley Thompson courses? It's like a golfer's paradise. I've heard golf is hugely popular in Canada, and they have so many fantastic courses at resorts. It sounds like the perfect blend of stunning scenery and great golfing experiences.
You can play the Banff Springs golf course without staying at the expensive hotel, which makes it more accessible for visitors. But I've heard that famous golf resorts like Pebble Beach and Pinehurst require you to stay at one of their resort hotels to book a tee time in advance, and the cost of playing these courses is insane. Is that right, David?
You're absolutely right, AJ. Many of the top-rated courses in the U.S., like Pebble Beach or Pinehurst No. 2, come with incredibly high green fees. For instance, playing at Pebble Beach golf links costs $675 per round, with an additional $55 cart fee per person. Similarly, Pinehurst No. 2 requires resort guests to stay on the property, with green fees bundled into packages. A second round on No. 2 is priced at $595 during peak season and $360 in the off-season, caddy not included. Add in the cost of staying at their resorts, and it can feel out of reach for most golfers. But at the same time, these courses are iconic for a reason: the history, the design, the scenery. It's all part of the experience. For some, it's a bucket list splurge, but I totally get how the price can be a big barrier. Shadow Creek is another example of a high-end, exclusive golfing experience. Located in Las Vegas, this course was originally built as a private retreat but is now accessible to guests of MGM resorts. The green fee is a steep $1,250 per round, making it one of the most expensive public access courses in the U.S. The fee includes a caddy, but you must also stay at an MGM property to secure a tee time. With its lush, immaculately maintained fairways and dramatic design set against the Nevada desert, Shadow Creek offers a level of luxury and exclusivity that few courses can match.
It is ridiculous to spend that kind of money for a round or two of golf. However, if this were my last golf trip to the U.S. and I didn't have to worry about money, I'd want to play Pebble Beach and some of the other courses on the Monterey Peninsula. Along with the golf experience, I'd love to visit Yosemite again and stay at the Ahwahnee Hotel. It would be the perfect combination of golf, nature, and a sense of genuine quality and timeless charm.
I played Pebble Beach every year during my tournament days, and I can say that it truly lives up to the hype. The views are absolutely breathtaking. With the cliffs, the ocean, and the iconic 7th hole, it's like playing golf on a postcard. The course is challenging but fair, and the conditions are always top-notch. If you ever get the chance to play there, AJ, I guarantee it will be an unforgettable experience. The other courses on the Monterey Peninsula, like Spyglass Hill and Spanish Bay, are incredible as well. They're all different but equally stunning.
Well, thank you for joining me today, David, and sharing your insights, experiences, and stories. I think our audience will enjoy this conversation as much as I did. It's amazing how golf brings people together, whether it's through the lessons it teaches or the memories it creates. I look forward to meeting you again on a golf course someday.
I truly enjoyed our conversation. It's been a pleasure reflecting on how much golf has given me, and it's clear you share that same passion. I look forward to seeing you out on the golf course, or wherever our paths may cross in the world.
今回の会話を通じて、ゴルフが国や文化によってどのように異なり、進化してきたのかを感じていただけたでしょうか。アメリカでのゴルフ旅行や文化への理解を深める一助になれば幸いです。次回の AJ's トークルームでは、今回のトークでも触れられた国立公園をテーマに、日米の違いやその魅力を掘り下げます。どうぞお楽しみに。